Starting over when you feel behind in life. Part 1. The fear no one admits. If you feel behind in life, starting over can feel terrifying. Not because you don't want change, but because you're afraid of confirming your worst fear. That you waited too long, that you're too far behind, that restarting means admitting failure. So you stay where you are, not because it's right, but because it's familiar. If you're stuck between wanting more and being afraid to begin again, this video is for you. Part 2. Why starting over sounds scary. The phrase starting over sounds heavy. It sounds like erasing progress, wasting time, going backward. But most of the time, you're not actually starting over. You're starting from experience, from lessons, from clarity, from knowing what doesn't work anymore. That's not failure. That's information. Part 3. The shame attached to restarting. A lot of the fear around starting over isn't practical, it's emotional. It's shame. Shame about changing your mind, leaving something you worked hard for, not becoming who you thought you would be. But growth often requires disappointment, not because you did something wrong, but because you learned something true. And truth changes direction. Part 4. Why people who feel behind stay stuck. When you already feel behind, starting over feels like falling even further back. So instead, people stay stuck in situations that drain them, jobs they've outgrown, identities that no longer fit, lives that feel smaller than they should. They tell themselves, I'll change later, when I'm more ready, when I feel more confident. But confidence doesn't come first. Clarity does. Part 5. You don't need a clean break. One of the biggest myths about starting over is that it has to be dramatic. Quit everything. Move somewhere new. Reinvent your entire life. But most real restarts are quiet. They happen internally first. A shift in how you think. A boundary you finally set. A decision you stop postponing. You don't need a clean slate. You need an honest one. Part 6. The difference between quitting and choosing. People often confuse quitting with choosing. Quitting is running from discomfort. Choosing is responding to truth. If something no longer aligns, if it's harming you, if it requires you to abandon yourself, leaving isn't weakness, it's self-respect. And self-respect is a foundation, not a flaw. Part 7. Grieving the life you thought you'd have. Starting over often comes with grief. Grief for the version of you that didn't get to exist, the timeline that didn't happen, the future you once imagined. This grief is rarely acknowledged, but it's real, and avoiding it only keeps you stuck longer. You're allowed to mourn what didn't work out, without believing it ruined your life. Part 8. You are not too old, too late, or too far gone. This belief keeps more people trapped than any actual circumstance, that they're too old, too late, too behind. But people change careers, relationships, identities, and entire lives, well into adulthood. What matters isn't age, it's willingness, and you still have that. Part 9. Why small restarts work better. Big restarts feel motivating, but small restarts are sustainable. Instead of asking, how do I fix my whole life? Ask, what's one thing I can change? Without overwhelming myself. One habit, one boundary, one honest conversation. Momentum comes from movement, not from perfection. Part 10. The fear of regretting another choice. Many people avoid starting over because they're afraid of choosing wrong again. But regret doesn't come from trying. It comes from staying somewhere you know isn't right. No choice guarantees certainty, but staying stuck guarantees dissatisfaction. And you already know what staying feels like. Part 11. You can start over without announcing it. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't need permission. You don't need validation. You don't need approval. You're allowed to change quietly, to outgrow things privately, to rebuild without updates. Your life doesn't need an audience. It needs honesty. Part 12. When self-doubt shows up, it will. Self-doubt doesn't disappear. When you start over, it follows you. It asks, what if this doesn't work? What if I fail again? What if I regret this too? Let it ask. You don't need to answer every question. To move forward, doubt is not a stop sign. It's just noise. Part 13. Redefining success after a restart. After starting over, success has to be redefined. Not as speed, comparison, external approval, but as peace, alignment, sustainability, self-trust. A successful life isn't loud. It's livable. Part 14. You're not behind. You're realigning. Feeling behind often means you've stopped pretending. You're no longer chasing what looks good at the expense of what feels right. That's not falling behind. That's waking up. And waking up is uncomfortable, but necessary. Part 15. A quiet permission. If you're standing at the edge of a restart, unsure, afraid, tired, let this be your permission. You're allowed to begin again. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to want a life that fits. Starting over doesn't mean you failed. It means you listened. And listening to yourself is one of the bravest things you can do. You're not late. You're not broken. You're not behind in the way you think. You're still becoming. Part 16. What if you don't feel ready yet? One of the quiet truths about starting over is that you rarely feel ready when the moment arrives. Readiness is often something we expect to feel before we move, but in real life it usually comes after the first step, after the first uncomfortable decision, after the first honest attempt. Waiting to feel ready can keep you waiting forever. You don't need confidence to begin. You don't need certainty. You just need enough honesty to admit that staying where you are is costing you something. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is move forward while still feeling unsure. Part 17. The loneliness of restarting. Starting over can feel lonely. Not everyone will understand your decision. Some people will question it. Some will minimize it. Some will assume you're confused or unstable. But loneliness doesn't mean you're wrong. It often means you're early. When you change direction, you temporarily walk ahead of the version of yourself others are used to seeing. That gap can feel isolating, but it doesn't last forever. Eventually, your new life catches up and begins to make sense, to you first and then to others. Part 18. Letting go of the need to catch up. A lot of pressure comes from the idea that you need to catch up to friends, catch up to expectations, catch up to a timeline that was never yours. But life isn't a race with a single finish line. It's a series of chapters, and some chapters are about rebuilding, not accelerating. You don't need to rush your restart to make it valid. Moving slowly, with intention, is still moving forward, and forward is enough. Part 19. A quiet reframe. If starting over feels heavy, try reframing it. You're not erasing your life. You're editing it. You're not behind. You're adjusting course with more awareness than before. Every experience you've had comes with you into this next chapter. Nothing is wasted if it taught you who you are and who you're not. So if today is the day you begin again, even quietly, even imperfectly, let that be enough. You're not starting from nothing. You're starting from truth. And that's a powerful place to begin.